I am encouraging FBI employees right now to stay in, and be that person who says no, that's illegal, that's unconstitutional, as long as you can. Now, here's the reality: the people I know who are eligible for retirement are probably not going to do that. Their resumes are flying out of the building right now,
Hmm.
and good for them if they can find a great job. But I worry about the employees who aren't eligible for retirement, have a family to feed, and they're going to be asked to do some pretty horrible things.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to Highly Conflicted, where we unpack the news inside Trump world and what might be coming down next at Mar-a-Lago. While Trump has a handful of controversial nominees, one deeply polarizing pick is Kash Patel to lead the FBI. He appears to have been picked for several reasons. Number one, he has many vocal allies in Trump world, including Steve Bannon and Mike Davis, the former nominations chief to Senator Chuck Grassley. Number two, he demonstrated his loyalty to Trump during the classified documents investigation, when he refused to testify before the federal grand jury in Washington until he was forced to by the chief judge. And number three, he's really ideologically aligned with Trump in a massive way, harboring his own distrust and hatred for the so-called deep state, so much so that Trump might not need to instruct him to go after his enemies. Patel might just do it of his own volition. After all, Patel's loyalty to Trump is personally his legend. He's vowed to pursue the deep state. He created a so-called enemies list in his book that's a who's who of Trump's perceived enemies from 2016. People like CIA Director John Brennan, former Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates, and the members on the January 6th committee. Now, once upon a time, we thought Patel might have a really tough time getting confirmed in the Senate. But in recent weeks, there's been a surge of enthusiasm for Patel from Senate Republicans. He quickly got endorsements from the likes of John Cornyn, the senior senator from Texas, who sits on the Senate Intelligence Committee. He got a big endorsement from Lindsey Graham, who is in line to chair the Senate Judiciary Committee, and Senator Joni Ernst, who questioned Trump's pick for defense secretary, was also quick to back Patel. So with Patel's confirmation looking increasingly likely, on today's pod, to look at how Patel might shape the FBI, I'm joined by Frank Figliuzzi, a former assistant director of the FBI's counterintelligence division, where he oversaw counterintel investigations. Frank is also a national security analyst for NBC and is the author of Long Haul, Hunting the Highway Serial Killers. Frank, thanks for coming on.
Hugo, I'm glad we could find time to do it. It's an important topic.
Well, let's dive in, because Kash would be coming into the FBI without having ever been at the Bureau. He has some national security experience, but a major caveat is that experience is extremely partisan, right? And for the benefit of Trump, whether it was when he was in the House Intel Committee when Devin Nunes was chair, who turned out to be a massive Trump ally, or when he served in the Trump admin. What are your main concerns about Patel's experience and how partisan and how Trump MAGA it is specifically?
It's a sad state of affairs when what I'm about to tell you is that the least of my worries, Hugo, are his total lack of qualifications. Let's face it, many of Trump's nominees lack qualifications. But it's the blind allegiance to Trump that really has me concerned. And so why is that? Well, look, it's possible to be a really smart leader who's done big things in other places and run an organization of 38,000 employees like the FBI. It's possible to do that with no solid background. It's not good. It'll be ugly. But that's not my concern. My concern is that he turns the FBI into something that works against the American people and further erodes the rule of law and even the Constitution. He's going to have to take an oath on day one to protect, preserve, and defend the Constitution. But his own language has been contrary to the Constitution. This talk of pursuing people, regardless of whether there's really a law there. He actually said, well, I don't know if it's going to be criminal or civil. We'll have to figure that out. Okay, well, the FBI doesn't work civil matters. So first of all, I don't know if he wants the FBI to sue somebody. Not sure what that means. And I've yet to this day to see the so-called evidence of criminality in the origin of the Russia investigation, Yes, there was a low-level FBI lawyer at headquarters who pled guilty to fabricating or misstating a characterization of a source in the infamous Carter Page FISA affidavit. That's it. John Durham was appointed a special counsel by Republican Attorney General Barr, and he found nothing. He went to trial twice and struck out twice. The DOJ's own Inspector General found that the Russia case was properly predicated. So this is a house of cards. This idea of a deep state who went after Trump extrajudicially outside of the law and now needs to get punished is a fallacy. A friend of mine, Andy McCabe, who I worked with, who was the deputy director of the FBI, was fired 26 hours before his retirement. All of that got back. His pension came back. DOJ said that was wrong. Similarly, Pete Strzok, we can argue about whether Pete deserved to be fired or not, but he was targeted for sure. So I don't see it there. And what's really worrying, Hugo, is Pam Bondi. You've got this perfect storm now in the justice system. Pam Bondi, nominee for AG, echoing the very same language as Kash Patel, that we're going to pursue prosecutors, we're going to pursue investigators. For what? For what exactly? So the concern I have is fabrication of cases, twisting of truths, political enemies. And if people think, boy, that sounds very far-fetched, that sounds like a horror flick. No, it happened, Hugo. It happened in our history. It happened with J. Edgar Hoover. It happened in the 60s and early 70s before Hoover passed, that there were illegal wiretaps, surveillances, break-ins, what they called black bag jobs. A Black Panther leader was murdered in Chicago, ostensibly at the hands of the FBI and Chicago PD, special unit at Chicago PD. Hoover wrote a letter to Martin Luther King suggesting he commit suicide. There were wiretaps. So, we can have it again. And some people say, well, after all those illegalities were exposed, Congress had the church committee, and all kinds of guidelines were instituted. Yes, they are guidelines. They are guidelines. But the very thing that allows the FBI, the tools that allow the FBI to jump on cases, jump on threats, and prevent iconic terror attacks since 9/11 could absolutely be abused. There's something called a threat assessment. There's a level up investigatively called a preliminary inquiry. And under threat assessments and preliminary inquiries, you can do a hell of a lot to surveil someone and make their life miserable without ever opening a full-blown investigation.
I mean, actually, that preempts a little bit of my next few questions, because it's to do with kind of checks and balances on the director's power. Trump said in a recent interview on Meet the Press on NBC that he would not direct investigations into his enemies, although he did say many should be in jail. But whether Trump directs Patel to do his dirty work or not, there seems to be a very good chance that Trump's enemy will come under criminal investigation at any level, just because that's what Kash wants to do himself. As director, logistically, what are the limitations or checks that you could implement? I mean, maybe it's actually really hard, because presumably he would come in and not only fire the senior executive staff, but he would install his own chief of staff. He would install his own general counsel who would okay things from an internal legal perspective. What do the internal checks at FBI headquarters look like?
You've set the table pretty well, because on an ordinary planet in an ordinary time, I would regurgitate what you just said. Oh, don't worry. There's a general counsel. Right. There's a deputy director. Oh, don't worry. The rest of the intel community would smack some sense into an FBI director, the head of NSA, CIA, DIA. They will put him in restraints. No, all of those people are going to be MAGA loyalists, Trump loyalists. And, DOJ has a huge machine, not only the Inspector General's office, but there's a OPR, there's right. All kinds of oversight. But if all of that oversight either goes away or is loyal to Trump as well, we lose those guardrails. So I don't think people truly realize how powerful an FBI director can be unrestrained. And as I said, DOJ guidelines are guidelines. You want to open a case and call it a threat assessment or a PI, you can do it. You've got 90 days to tell your supervisor, I've got something or I don't. 90 days is a lot of time to wreak havoc with somebody's life. So that's a real concern of mine. And this deputy director position, I keep hearing, and tell me if you heard this or not, that the deputy director position, which is historically a career FBI agent, to run the day-to-day work of the FBI. So that even if you have a director who goes off track, you still got daily operations being run by a professional agent. I'm hearing they're going to take that away and put in a political appointee or just a hand-picked civilian. You hearing that?
Yeah, I think that's quite likely. I mean, before Kash was formally nominated to be the next FBI director, you and I were talking about how actually there was a discussion about how Kash might be placed in the deputy role because it's not Senate confirmed, and that way it actually might be easier to manipulate the levers of the FBI day to day, right? So I think that's almost a given at this point. And kind of just while we're on that about the power of DOJ. Historically, or technically even, the FBI is supposed to report to main justice, right? It's overseen by the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General.
That's correct.
But we have had, most recently, including with Jim Comey, say what you will about Jim Comey, but there were certain moments when he took pretty unilateral action. And I guess if an FBI director really wanted to distance himself from main justice, it is possible, right?
That's a great point. I'm going all the way back to Hoover for horrific abuses. But, more recently, and I'm not, please don't, let me be clear, I'm not suggesting Comey was abusing the FBI. But yes, if the FBI director wants to get a press conference together, not tell DOJ, and make pronouncements to the public about a case opening, a case closing, no reasonable prosecutor would ever do this, or someone should be prosecuted, they can do it. They can do it. And we don't know how much leeway Mr. Patel would get, but that's a real concern. That just imagine an FBI director just trying to ruin your day, your life, and holding a press conference about how mean you are. That could happen. And then going through files, right? I imagine on his first day in the office, whoever his admin is, he's going to say, I need to know where the bathroom is, and I need every file that has the word Trump in it. And that's going to happen, and guaranteed. And that'll be presented to Trump. It may go public as to who was cooperating. The FBI guards like Fort Knox their informant base. I mean, those files are locked down because literally somebody could die. And that should be a concern, that Kash Patel's going through informant files and saying, look at that. This guy coughed it up on Trump or these Republicans. Day 2, give me all the corruption files involving Republican elected officials. Wow. Throughout the country? Yeah. We're going to close a lot of those. Oh, okay. And then extend this to the field, where I'm hearing some really bad rumor, as I call it, rumor intelligence, that, this is going to extend to the field, this gutting of the Bureau. So what happens to special agents in charge? Are they going to have someone come alongside them to watch them, to monitor them? Somebody looking over their shoulder? All kinds of rumor about, hey, here's what they're going to do. They're going to take deputized cops and chiefs of police and stuff, retired, and they're going to put them in charge of field offices. Combine that nightmare with the fact that every U.S. attorney in every judicial district will turn over. That's typical. But what's not typical is they'll likely have to make a pledge of allegiance to Trump. They'll have to be trusted MAGA. And now you've got decisions in your community where you live, FBI field office, federal prosecutor, and they are doing what? Are they not opening corruption cases against Republican commissioners? Are they not opening Russia counterintelligence cases in your city? What's not getting done? And while they're pursuing Trump's enemies throughout the country, how about that violent gang in your city that makes you feel unsafe? Is that happening? The child predators organized crime. What's not getting done while you're going after political enemies? All of that concerns me.
Well, so okay, you raised two really interesting points, right? Number one is the one thing Patel is exploring is to gut the senior executive service at FBI headquarters in Washington, but also maybe to close down or consolidate the Washington field office, right? Can you explain? Because I think most people don't really understand how it all fits together. How WFO fits into the bureau's organizational structure and what implications that could have. Like, we're not talking about any of the other big field offices in New York, but let's just start with like WFO.
Sure. I mean, Washington field office is a large field office, one of now 55 field offices in the FBI, but it's particularly important not only because of its size, but its mission. I mean, it's in the seat of government. So of course, Washington field office gets the big, high-profile political cases. Also, I will say, on the national security side, it has all the embassies right there in Washington. And that means they work the top counterintelligence cases in terms of spying, monitoring and catching foreign intelligence officers operating in the DC area. And boy, are there a lot of those. You can imagine the defense contractor industry, where the corruption involved in defense contracting, all the big names we can rattle off if we want to get in trouble, all right there at WFO. It's so big that the person in charge of the Washington field office is an assistant director, whereas the person in charge of almost every other field office is called an SAC, a special agent in charge. This guy or gal is an assistant director with SACs under him of a criminal division, a counterterrorism division, a counterintelligence division, all of that going on under one roof there. And it's funny. Years ago, when I was at headquarters as a very young supervisor, Louis Freeh was the director. And Louis Freeh came in, and interestingly, he was a federal judge, and also a federal prosecutor. But before that, he was an agent for several years. And he came in and said, headquarters is too fat. I want some dead wood out of here, and he came up with some arbitrary numbers about if you've been here at headquarters X number of years, get the hell out. And so he was, and then to avoid all of this is what Kash Patel is going to have to wrestle with. How do you legally, within all of the bureaucracy of the government, how do you empty out headquarters? Because you're talking tens of millions of dollars to literally transfer people around the country. You're talking all kinds of lawsuits if you do away with civil service protections. So what Louis Freeh came up with was kind of an interesting solution. You all can go to, people over this age or over this number of years here, go to Washington field office and figure it out. Go work some crime or something. Go do something over down there. Get out of headquarters. Well, guess what? Soon enough, people went, oh God, we're understaffed. And the numbers had to come back. So it sounds good on the evening news to say, I'm going to empty out the bureaucrats of headquarters. Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, they serve a function. They do. And people think, yeah, that's where, Kash Patel has said, I want agents. Agents are cops. That's a quote. Agents are cops. Let them go be cops. Let them work murder and rape. Well, no one has told Kash Patel that murder and rape in and of themselves are not federal crimes. So,
right.
Somebody's got to tell them that we don't do that. And at headquarters, they have a 30,000 foot view of the world. And people say, well, who cares about the world? America first. No, the transnational crime that's happening here, whether it's a Venezuelan gang or an El Salvadoran gang or the mafia or Japanese.
Or in Miami or in New York, right.
Drugs, cartels, it's all international. The FBI, I'm sure Mr. Patel will be shocked someday to find out that the FBI covers almost 200 countries with, 80 offices abroad? 80 abroad. I'll bet you he doesn't know that. Yeah.
That's a really good point. It's a really good point, right? Because even in the IC, in the intelligence community, there is this idea that, the agency does foreign stuff and the bureau does domestic stuff. And actually in our world now, it's so interconnected. It's just not true.
Exactly.
I actually wonder if what ends up happening to some of these partisan driven investigations is that either one, they get overtaken by these day-to-day fires that, he's going to have to deal with, or his staff is going to have to deal with.
Yeah.
But also, like, number two, I wonder how many career agents who are thinking longer term, and like once Trump is out, this period might change or destabilize. But once Trump is out, things will change, and they start taking more aggressive CYA measures, right, to ensure that they're on the right side of anything. If there's a congressional investigation 5 years down the line, that they will be able to say, I did the right thing, and in doing so, all of this stuff that Kash Patel wants to do actually gets slowed down. Ironically, through bureaucracy and people wanting to cover themselves.
I would, for that reason, I am encouraging FBI employees right now to stay in and be that person who says, no, that's illegal, that's unconstitutional, as long as you can. Now, here's the reality. The people I know who are eligible for retirement are probably not going to do that. Their resumes are flying out of the building right now. And good for them if they can find a great job. But I worry about the employees who aren't eligible for retirement, have a family to feed, and they're going to be asked to do some pretty horrible things. So yes, I think there will be resistance. I think there'll be courtroom resistance to things like, hey, I'm going to do away with your civil service protections. You're fired. Okay, for what? I don't know, but go away. That's going to end up in court. And a lot of that will happen. And then there'll be quiet things like you're implying, which is, yeah, no, you want me to open that case on some enemy of Trump, but there's no predication here. There's no criminality. Yeah, sure. I'll work that really hard after I get back from the gym. So, there's going to be that kind of resistance as well.
Like, also to that point, I mean, stuff like FBI background checks, I guess it's possible that, we have previously reported at The Guardian that Trump or the Trump transition team intends for most of his political appointees to have background checks done after Kash Patel is in the building, after their people are running the bureau and not before. I mean, there might be some exceptions. Pete Hegseth, for instance, has supposedly put his name forward, and that, in the Trump transition has signed a memorandum of understanding with DOJ to start background vetting. Whether or not that happens, who knows? And it's actually really complicated with the various factions inside Trump world. But something like that, something very like comparatively low. It's crazy that I'm even saying this, like comparatively low stakes to anything else that Kash Patel might want to do. But in terms of background checks, is there a way for agents to not do aggressive checks? Is there a way? Maybe they have to do the full vetting, and then it's up to Kash Patel to decide whether or not he sends the entire file to the White House. I don't know. Like, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Okay. This is a great topic and another concern, because my concern right now is that this DOJ MOU that Trump signed was simply done to appease members of the Senate Judiciary Committee and kind of shut them up for a while. But I will tell you, the last time I talked to a source, the Bureau has not yet received the actual formal request for backgrounds, nor a list of the nominees. Now that could change tomorrow, but your statement that it's quite possible that Kash Patel oversees these investigations is problematic. And so why is it problematic? Yes, agents know how to do a background investigation, and they're exhaustive. Not unusual to have hundreds of interviews done for one nominee. And let me tell you, it's not 100 of your favorite friends. The job there is to find, yes, you give give me some references, but from there, here we go to the scorned girlfriend or the neighbor who hates you. And all of this starts to come out, and that's where you're going. And they cover everything. People don't realize they cover not just loyalty to the United States and whether you're qualified for a clearance, but are you competent? Your ability is there. Your reputation is there. Your finances are gone over. So they know how to do it in the field. Once it gets to headquarters, can it be manipulated by somebody like Kash Patel? You bet. What gets to his desk and what gets to the Oval Office might be two very different things. The other thing that could happen is that the White House could start dictating, hey, don't interview Sally. Sally is a problem, so
Right.
don't go near Sally. Now, that's not supposed to happen, but you know where that does happen, in not only in my experience, but we've all witnessed it with the Justice Kavanaugh,
Right.
the reinvestigation. So when there's a reinvestigation, and that would apply now to anybody, and I'm trying to quickly run through the list here of nominees, anybody who's already had a federal background done for their position, clearance,
Right.
whatever they are, advisor, that's called a reinvestigation now. And guess what? Those are different. And the White House dictates the parameters of a reinvestigation, which is permitted. It's the only thing, background investigations are the only thing the FBI does where the client is not the American people. The client is the White House. So don't be surprised if parameters are set and interviews are dictated. You talk to them, don't talk to them.
Like for Seb Gorka, for instance, who was not able to successfully complete a TSSCI background check, as we understand, or was reported at the time during the first Trump admin.
Yeah, I have
among other people, who is now going to be the counterterrorism director for Trump.
That's right. That's right. I personally, when I was assistant director, had to deal with a messy a nominee investigation. Ended up at the White House. And that White House wanted to get to the bottom of things and be honest. And they said, Frank, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to polygraph this nominee. And they said, go ahead, do it. So that's under a cooperative administration.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you imagine if this happens after January 20th?
I will say, look, Kash Patel does have experience as an assistant U.S. attorney, right? He was a prosecutor. He was on a number of counterterrorism cases. Not the first chair, not the lead prosecutor by any stretch, even though he likes to present himself that way. But I think what was more interesting to me is that the FBI's role is to conduct investigations and to leave the charging decisions to main justice. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of FBI agents who feel like they should play a bigger role in charging decisions, and you've seen that crop up sometimes along the way, not least in the classified documents investigations into Trump. But what would be the implications of a director who was clearly interested in a charging outcome from the outset? I mean, is there a way at the FBI, because I've never run an FBI investigation, is there a way to create the situation where you're envisioning criminal charges and to find evidence to fit that crime sort of thing?
For sure. And that's a shoddy, half-assed investigation, isn't it? Because you've got an outcome that you've already dictated. So you're headed where you want to go. And yeah, yes, of course, you eliminate other suspects in something. You don't look at exculpatory information, nor do you disclose it in court. And would
you even disclose it to DOJ? I mean, prior to bringing a case before a grand jury, it would go through the appellate division at DOJ, right?
So here, this gets interesting because there aren't a lot of cases that have to get approval at DOJ. They're not. This happens at the U.S. attorney level in the field. Most of it.
Right.
Certainly, if you were to charge a politician, certain election crimes, et cetera, certain civil rights investigations, yes, got to go to DOJ. All your national security cases, you're going to go to DOJ. But a lot gets done at the U.S. attorney's office. And don't forget, U.S. attorneys are going to be Trump loyalists, right? And you've got this kind of unholy triangle that's going to exist in Washington, which is the White House, the FBI, the DOJ, in the form of Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, all on the same sheet of music. So, if Patel wants to have lunch with Bondi and say, look, I think we're ginning something up on Liz Cheney. Mm-hmm. I think we've got something because maybe she hid some evidence. We don't know, but we're going to open a case on her, and the boss wants this to happen. So right, okay, and there you go. There's a preliminary inquiry. I don't know, and if a career DOJ prosecutor wants to stand up and go, no, there's no predication that doesn't meet the standards, well, they're fired, right? And who do they run to? During his first administration, Trump repeatedly expressed disdain for the inspectors generals at all the agencies, right? And said things like they're all going to go away. And then he said they're all going to fall under the White House, or they're all going to be mine. And so you think an employee is going to run to an IG? No.
Especially now. I mean, if like, for instance, at DOJ, I don't think, let's see if Michael Horowitz stays on as DOJ IG, but it could well be that he resigns or he leaves, and then Trump appoints someone more to his liking.
Yeah, I can't believe, let's not forget, it was Horowitz who said that Crossfire Hurricane, the Russia case, was properly predicated, right? So I can't imagine Pam Bondi's going to keep him on.
Right.
No. And again, I'm not certain that there's going to be IGs, or that they're even going to
fill the spots. Right.
Yeah, or they might report right to the White House, and then then you might as well not have any IGs.
Yeah. Well, it's all really concerning, but we will continue to track this, and we'd love to have you back on as this all develops. But thank you for coming on and giving your insight, Frank. Appreciate it.
No, thank you. And my last word: if people listen to this and are concerned, pick up the phone, call your senators, and tell them, even the Republican senators, say, look, we need FBI. Not only do we need FBI investigations to occur, we need them to occur legitimately under this administration, not under Kash Patel. That's a conflict of interest. And Senate, you do not want to lose your advice and consent powers. And you're on the precipice of losing them, particularly if there are recess appointments or half-ass background.
The Federal Vacancies Act, even. I mean, yeah, we don't even have to go that far, right?
Yeah, let's remember this. Kash Patel can serve as an acting for about 7 months. It could go longer. 7 months is a lot of time to do damage. Yeah. Anyway, thank you for the conversation.
I'm Hugo Lowell, a senior political correspondent at The Guardian. Special thanks to our guest today, Frank Figliuzzi.